Oh my goodness, Bart Johnson Productions got my drink and I'm ready to go. Heck yeah. Who's this DSLR video shooter person? Amazing. Same here. Hello. Gave you guys a like and the show hasn't even started yet. Thank you, Benjamin. And here we are. It is Wednesday, February something. 3rd? Am I right? Is it 3rd?
Yeah, 3rd.
This is episode 98. We are 2 away from 3 digits, 100. Cameron Flask, welcome everybody. I don't know. It's Wednesday. It's cold in Illinois. It's cold in the Czech Republic. It's cold in Oregon. And here we are. Gentlemen, welcome back to the show, if you could call it a show.
It's episodic and it's once a week, so why not?
I'm just like uncomfortable silence.
On my teleprompter, I'm distracted because on my teleprompter and kind of on YouTube, it looks like Ben and my backgrounds, where my hand is over here, kind of blurs together. It looks like we're kind of sitting social distance from each other in real life.
It does a little bit, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
I like that. I kind of like it, though. I mean, let's see what happens if I do that and that, and then I bring you back in here, and then you back there. There we go. Now you're separated a little bit more.
Oh, I liked being near Ben.
It was good. It was nice. Our grayness was...
I can't remember which is the right order. Oh, it's not. I have to do.
It's ruined. You ruined it.
There you go. And there's.
And this is what we call entertainment, folks.
Oh
this
my
is
goodness!
the future
All right.
of production.
What are you guys drinking, by the way?
Let's do it. I'll go first because this week I'm not drinking beer. I'm doing something with the
wait
cork.
a minute. I've totally
and it's
screwed
one
this
that
up.
I'm very excited about.
What the heck am I doing here? Hold on.
What is happening over there?
I have no idea. Just give me a second. I promise I'm going to get this back in here. Oh my God.
Jesus Christ. This is making me feel ill. Seasick.
Okay. Are you ready? We're going back in.
Now there's nobody.
Whatever happens right now happens. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. And we're back.
There it is.
All right.
Okay.
There it is.
Based on those cuts, Jem may have started drinking too early.
I did not.
Earlier, he was like, I skipped lunch.
I'm not
I've
sleeping.
Got nothing. I'm like, that's a good idea. Start drinking after you haven't had
What are you
any
drinking?
lunch.
Let's see. What you got?
So I saved this one for a long time. This is like more than half a bottle, which is crazy for me. And it's my namesake.
Whoa! Pikesville.
Oh, nice.
Yep.
Very nice.
Rye whiskey. And this
Beautiful.
stuff is something else. It is mighty. Very powerful stuff.
80 proof.
110 proof.
Oh, 110 proof. Ooh, 80.
Yeah, so it's got a serious kick. And the rye end of it is, rye's, spicy. It's not sweet like bourbon.
Yep.
Wow. It's like a meal.
But you like
So
it.
we'll go ahead and I do. It's definitely something I wouldn't drink like every day.
Yeah.
But very nice. Very
nice.
hearty.
Ben, what
So
you
that's
got?
the deal with me.
I'm finishing a bottle of Rioja that I started, I don't know, last night or the night before.
20
Very
minutes
nice. No, I've been quite restrained. I'm not in a really massive drinking mood at the moment. But this is a good... I don't know why. I think the whole lockdown thing, I think it's maybe some little self-protection thing that's built into me that goes, you can't get into drinking loads at the moment. Otherwise, it's just going to be a disaster because you're just stuck at home all the time. And it's going to get earlier and earlier if I start on with that. It's going to be like 3 o'clock and then we're going, maybe I could have one now. Be like you now.
Well, it is 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but I will say at the beginning of the pandemic, especially about 4 to 6 weeks into it, I think I definitely went through a phase where I was drinking more for a period of time. We were all there was a lot of those Zoom happy hours going on, and people were just trying to sort out what the heck was going on in the world. And that calmed down over the summer, actually, and I've never gotten back. That was probably a period of time where I was going through bottles of scotch faster than I should have been. But it's all good now, so here we go. Oh, Camille, come on. And there, coming in with the super chat. €5 for the drinking. Beautiful. Love it. Thank you, Camille. And thank you for coming every week. There you go. So I'm having
and all of you folks who show up every week.
Everybody.
Because you know
Amazing.
who you are.
There we go. I'm having another Oregon. Well, let's see if it comes in. Another Oregon Pinot Forest. It's 2019, so same year that you're drinking over there, Ben. And cheers, gentlemen, to friendship.
Cheers.
To friendship and hanging out every week. And to everybody here in the chat. Okay. And there you have it. Hello. Rabbit Tribble is here. Bart Johnson. Bart's been smoking some meats lately. That doesn't mean anything. Do not demonetize me. And he's doing well with that. I think there's like some briskets going and then ribs. I'm following them what's going on. Speaking of food, have you ever heard of the cut of meat called Terrace Major? It's part of the chuck, and you open it up, and inside of there is about a 1/2 to 3/4 pound fillet. It's the second most tender cut of beef in a cow. And you can't find it in a lot of places, but it's about 1/2 to 1/3 of the price of filet mignon. And we just threw a double 50th birthday party for friends this weekend. And I made Terrace Major, and I seared it in beef tallow, which was delicious. And then finished it in the oven, and then made shrimp scampi on the giant ones on the grill. And it was quite delicious, I have to say. So there you go.
Very
Beef
nice.
tallow.
Making me
Cook
hungry.
sear some meat in some beef tallow. Again, do not demonetize. Gentlemen, this week, thanks, Benjamin. Just so I could throw something up against the wall, I said future production, but I think it's a valid conversation to have, which is, in the last year, a lot of things have changed, and maybe people are thinking about how they're going to approach production in the future. A lot of us have gone back out into the production world, yourself included, Ben. You just took a jump over or drive over to the island, and you had to deal with whatever you had to deal with. Bart, you're making your own beef tallow? Give me a break. Okay, that's ridiculous. So you had to deal with your own production stuff up there in the Lake District. And Caleb, I don't know if things have changed for you or your perspective has changed in the last year, even though you have your own studio space and you're creating content. But I thought with the chat, it might be a good idea to have a little bit of a conversation about how we think about going forward with production. Any initial thoughts on that? Caleb, what do you got to start off with? I mean, what have you been noticing, reading, seeing, anything?
Well, it's definitely, from my perspective, it's a little different because, you guys, this is completely changing your careers in a way, because you're not able to go out and do traditional production. On my end, it's kind of reacting to that because a lot of the people that everyone's working from home now. So people who never once in their life pointed a camera at themselves are now constantly pointing cameras at themselves. So it kind of worked out because the content I enjoy making is solving problems like that for people and for myself. But now it's that audience is much larger and more diverse. So I think from that perspective, I mean, in a way, it's not, I don't know if you call it production, but there's so many more people. Like we had this boom of video being more popular and people getting into filmmaking, the DSLR revolution, and just you look at channels like yours and mine 10 years ago versus now, it went from literally a handful to you can't count them. And I think that's only going to be fueled even more with this whole thing as people get into this stuff. So, production doesn't change much for me because it's always been here. and just me. But yeah, it's just going to be weird. I think it's going to be like the rest of the world. We're just going to have to figure out what things are looking like and how we're going to move forward with all this. And then, anyone's best guess when we'll be back to, normal.
Yeah. Do you think that from that perspective that you've thought about changing the type of content that you're creating because of that audience and people working from home, or you're still going down the path of, I'm going to just figure out what I want to do in terms of creating content? I don't think you're producing as many camera guides now, or maybe you are, but what's sort of your focus? Like what makes the most sense for you and will be enjoyable for you in terms of creating content?
I think I'm just gonna keep doing what I'm enjoying. I took a little bit of a break. First video in a month will be up this week, hopefully, maybe next week. But just focusing less on gear reviews, like so and such and such sent me this, and here's how it works, and I'm kind of over that.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely more content about the kind of this stuff. Just because I enjoy it, but also there's a real need. And I wish, and Ben or Jem, I know you're doing this. There are so many people reaching out for consultations. It's crazy with everything happening. Because again, people need to take whatever their business is and figure out a way to get it online.
Right.
Guides. I'm kind of over camera guides. I'll probably I'll do a few more. But I really want to work on this content creators guide, which is going to be pretty much everything I've figured out over the last 10 years, all boiled down into one thing, one streamable, downloadable course.
Yeah.
Cool.
So I'm really looking forward to that because I'm going to go off into the weeds. Like, here's a spreadsheet I use to run all the financials, like all the stuff. So that'll be fun.
Great.
But a little daunting, but yeah, I don't know if I'll necessarily react to what's happening in the world. I don't know. It's weird. It's a weird time.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I'm kind of an oddball in that
How about you,
whole
Ben?
situation.
How are things changing? I mean, let's take the COVID, what's happening with testing and numbers and things like that. We're purely focusing on production here. And, how is that changing for you, and where do you see it going for you going forward?
I think at the moment it's in this. I feel like things could change for the better. It feels like with this entire situation, we don't know that there's this sort of light at the end of the tunnel in that the vaccination stuff's happening. We don't know how effective that's going to be, how long it lasts, how that changes things. Obviously, for me, a massive part of what I do is traveling, which I've not been doing. I did go to the UK for a job, which was months in the planning because of working around the COVID regulations, working around the travel restrictions as well. So it's kind of a double whammy. We've also got Brexit thrown in there now, which is making things quite complicated in terms of traveling in between the UK and the EU with gear. So the customs arrangements that you're needing to make with all of that. So things are sort of slightly complicated, and I feel it's quite hard to know where. We're obviously not going to go back to normal anytime soon, but it's working out what in terms of UK work is going to be feasible, because it's in terms of your profit margin as well. And this is a difficult thing. If you're pricing stuff out for clients, and you've got for the job that I did in the UK, that was 3 COVID tests. It would have been 4 had I not been willing to sit in quarantine. I'm still in quarantine now until Friday. I could have got out of it after 5 days with having another test, but they're expensive. You're like $130 for a test for each one of those. Now that's for not a big shoot. Your margins are disappearing pretty quickly with all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So, and it's whether you're writing that in. It's how easy it is to do. So that's a huge change, obviously. And then in terms of it's this yet another thing to be being responsible about, because it's all very well working around it and what can you do, but also you are needing to keep yourself and everybody else around you safe, and it's a huge extra consideration. So in terms of your pre-production stuff, but also during production, I think I find it still quite nerve-wracking, be the right word. I don't know, or certainly stressful during the shoot, having to be thinking about that all the time in the back of your mind, as well as trying to do the job and trying to be creative with it as well. And you know, this isn't just the number crunching stuff. You're trying to be creative. You're trying to make something that's great. The client's going to love, and it's a huge mental burden having to deal with all of that. What I can't quite get my head around at the moment. Obviously, there's a lot of people working on productions who are having regular testing, all of that stuff going on. That seems to be the way that people are getting around things now. But again, I don't know at what point and at what mass of people being vaccinated do they then say, all right, well, if you've got that, then that's going to allow you to travel, and how that works. And there's obviously, bigger issues there as well, because if you're starting restricting people who don't want to be vaccinated, and there's a whole, moral argument to have about that. It's really difficult. I've had my first vaccination because I don't have a spleen due to a motorbike accident many years ago. So I'm get on the higher up the lists than most people of my age, I guess.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that kind of will give me a little bit of a pass to start traveling again. But I don't know. And the other part of that is trying to do more stuff locally. So over the last 12 months, I've been doing a lot more work in the Czech Republic, but it's not very profitable. That's the big problem. It's good. It's fun. It's interesting. It's great for your mental well-being. That's the biggest thing at the moment. I'm desperate to start doing more of that kind of stuff. It was amazing working with the crew again, working with friends, having that sort of camaraderie on a job, which I don't do well being on my own at home. It's driving me nuts.
Yeah. Interesting. It's definitely a different world out there when it comes to production. I mean, the last trip that I took, the last time I got on airplanes was to go up to Edmonton, Canada. And at the moment, if you want to go to Canada as of last week, when you show up in the country, you have to pay $2,000 when you enter the country. When you get there, they give you a test. If you, after you're given the test, they put you in a hotel for 3 days. That's part of your $2,000. So you get tested, you go to a hotel. You don't get to choose the hotel. And then after 3 days, you get the results of your test back. And then if you are negative, then you go somewhere and you continue your quarantine. And if you are positive, they send you to a place that's the in-between place until you are deemed that you do not have COVID anymore. I don't know what I'm going to... I said I wasn't going to get into that, and we're going to talk about production. But there's some bonkers shit going on in the world right now. That's all I have got to say right now. And it makes me... I get a thumbs down. I don't know why, but I'll take it in the show. All right. So, from my perspective,
Canadian
I don't really want...
purgatory.
Yeah, exactly.
The chat.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. I don't... and I have a very, very close friend who lives here, who is Canadian, who's also American, who just went to Canada, and he said it's absolutely bonkers. But it makes me not want to go anywhere, and I love to travel, and I love to do things with other people. I've been fortunate enough to be working for a client where I wake up every day, and I'm actually showing up on set. I'm directing a crew of 10 people who are based in Florida, which apparently you can do anything in Florida. And, they're wearing masks and they're being careful, but they're all on set together and they're doing this production, which could not actually happen in California. And I'm on Zoom for, from 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning until late afternoon. And we're running scripts and we're creating content and, that's what we're doing. But I'm also building remote production spaces for other talent that are involved with this client or for consulting and building out the barn to be a production space. I want to travel. I want to do the things that I was doing before, but quite honestly, I don't want to deal with the nonsense of, sticking giant Q-tips up my nose and getting tests 4 or 5 times a week, sometimes daily. And I'm not personally interested in that. And if I'm coming into a job and I'm not just a day player, but I'm a producer, the enormous responsibility you have on a project it's absolutely insane in the small to mid-sized production space. It's absolutely bonkers because you have to know that at any point in time that production could get shut down, that if anybody gets sick, that all of a sudden it can get canceled or shut down for a certain period of time. You almost have to have a budget and a production schedule that's 2 to 3 times higher and longer than you did before. So how does that work unless you're working with budgets like Netflix has and Amazon and larger studios? So I just don't see it in the short term, but I do see tremendous opportunity for remote production and doing that.
Yeah.
So I'm interested in that. I think that that's a growth area. I think it's somewhat specialized, but combining what I do for
Not for
education. Well, no, not for long.
Yeah, it's gotta be.
It's gotta be. Yep.
Yeah.
But it's crazy.
So questions from everything you just said. As we know, those of us who have put bread on the table with video production, traditional, hit the ground running, locations, clients, all of that stuff. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, the margins have never been wildly good.
No.
Like a friend of mine says all the time, if you're looking to buy a yacht, don't get into video production unless you're on the very high end,
in the
filmmaking,
80s.
Marvel
in the 80s.
movies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or in the 80s.
Yeah. So it's not a get rich kind of career.
I'm not talking about that other industry. Take that smirk off of your face. I said 80s. I see that smirk. Not that industry is not what I'm talking about. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry, Caleb.
So you take that, you throw COVID at it, and like Ben mentioned, just running the numbers anywhere you live, like what you were talking about is terrible, $100 or more a test.
Yeah.
But just all of it, like Jem, you mentioned time. You really have to budget a lot more time. And that's a lot more money when you look at day rates. Granted, everyone's dying for work, or a lot of people are, so day rates might be completely different these days. But overall, there's got to be some changes, and there's going to have to be some pretty interesting rethinking of how we do production if this continues.
Yeah,
if this isn't a temporary situation.
Yeah.
So, what are the solutions? At least for now, if people are out there, like Jem, you've been in the middle of a lot of remote directing, producing.
Yeah.
Is there anything you've learned from that could be? Granted, it's Florida, so it's a little different. They're able to do stuff there.
No, I have.
Do you think that's a regular deal? Working
I can
from afar. Or...
Yeah, I can tell you a little bit about the client, and I see somebody's mentioning something about Chattanooga, which is Benjamin Rowland. A bunch of my family actually lives on Lookout Mountain, so that's pretty funny. So I think that the big thing for me is, first of all, there may be there's no going back to the way it was for certain companies. Now, we clearly understand that remote work environments is something that's completely changed in the last year, especially with huge companies, right? It's, Apple built the spaceship, and that's, in all honesty, if I were Apple, and of course they had their biggest quarter ever just now, but if I were Apple, I'd leave everybody who can work from home at home, and then I just have the core inside the spaceship and get rid of all that other real estate that's around Cupertino and everywhere else, because they probably don't need it, in all honesty, for a large percentage of the people who are working for the company. You need the secret people together and the people who are creating the new products and stuff. But a lot of the people who are going out there, and there's a big aspect for a company like Apple, which is just regular salespeople. You know, they're trying to get the products out there to enterprise and all these other markets. They don't need to be, you know, at the mothership when it comes to a company like that. Google, you know, Microsoft, they've already made decisions that they're going to extend remote working to these companies. Our industry is definitely a little bit different, but I will say this, that the company that I'm doing work for has one small production space in LA. They're not able to use it right now because of all of the guidelines and restrictions in California. But they could not have pulled off what we've been doing for them in the last 4 to 5 months unless they moved to a remote production model for a number of reasons. But they're also realizing now that they're building home studios for talent that are based in California, based in Georgia, based in New York, based in New Jersey, based in Florida. And they're able to produce content now in actually larger quantity than they were before COVID happened. And they probably would have never done this unless COVID happened. So the opportunity for them to create more content actually has come out of this situation. And at the same time, I have actually been busier in the last 4 to 5 months than I have in the last 4 to 5 years. And I'm working from home. And there is opportunity there. But your mindset when it comes to production has to completely change, because you have to realize that you might be a script supervisor, but now you're a script supervisor over Zoom. You could be, you know, a director, but you're a director over Zoom. You almost treat this right here as a video village. So if you're somebody who doesn't mind being separated from the set, then it's not necessarily a hard transition. For somebody like me who loves to be in the set and actually there and interacting with people, it was a harder transition in some respects. And I really have to think about Zoom sort of being my video village. And we always have our hero camera. Our hero cameras being fed as cameras to Zoom. But I think that at this point in time, there's actually a lot of opportunity, but it's also some of it that you have to create yourself. You have to have conversations with your clients. It's not like the client's just going to say to you, you know, we'd like to explore this remote production thing. You have to help them figure out some of these things and how to do them, I think.
I think so. And I think on a sort of halfway house from that kind of model of doing things and a little bit of how we used to work, what I see happening over the next 6 months for sure, particularly with the whole Brexit thing and the travel and the work permits, because of course everyone in the UK was able to go and work everywhere in Europe. That's now a little bit more complicated than it was. So I'm looking at marketing myself to UK production people who are needing someone who's based in the EU. But that's also a thing, I think, generally from the COVID stuff, is that you're going to need to go out to people who are where you need to go get the footage. You know, you're not going to send your guy, because that's just not going to be possible for a while yet.
Yeah,
So that's something else of really needing to forge contact, because if you can be that guy who is known for, you know, Central Europe, whatever it is. We've come across this. There's a production that we pitched for, which is on the back burner, so we still don't know if we're doing it or not because of the general situation. But we were needing it was like a 1 day or half a day, just some B-roll that we needed in Holland. So initially we were looking at me driving there and shooting that, but now we're still looking at doing the production, but we're going to get somebody, and I know there's many of our friends in the chat from that particular part of the world. So it's those kind of contacts and that I see as being a different way that I'm going to be marketing myself from now on. And also, so I've changed all my website around to say this is partly COVID, partly Brexit, being very location specific as to where I am, and also about me being dual national, which is more Brexity than this, and being that I'm still an EU citizen. Yep. And also, I'm going to start putting on that I'm being vaccinated on my website for a little while.
Interesting. It's interesting to me also to talk about the whole aspect of your viewpoint about the pandemic, because I think that also can create more or less opportunity for you as an individual. You know, when I look at a place like Florida, and, you know, we have to be transparent here, everything's fair game there. It really is. And it's so different. If you want to see an opposite to California, just go to Florida. Because if you owned a soundstage in Florida and somebody needed to do production and they weren't a huge corporation and you were at least putting on the show that you were doing what you needed to do when it comes to COVID and the pandemic, and when people showed up, everybody was wearing masks and things like that. What happens when the cameras are off, or whatever happens when the camera's off, who knows? But as a state, pretty much everything's fair game. And then we all interact with each other, and every single person who interacts with each other has a different viewpoint about what they're comfortable with and what they're not comfortable with. And I think that that's very important to also discuss, because you may show up on set and somebody may be there because they want to get back into the game. They really feel like they need to be back in production, but they're scared shitless. And then there's somebody else who couldn't give a rat's ass. They're like, I'm not going to wear a mask when I don't have to wear a mask. And so this exists, you know, and we have to understand that it exists. And there are lots of different viewpoints. And I'm not going to say that one of those viewpoints is necessarily right or wrong. It's part of who we are as human beings to have our own viewpoints about things, and who should be telling us what to do or not telling us what to do, and what's right and what's wrong. And this has been a very confusing year for all of us, because we've been told many things and then told the opposite thing, then told back to the original thing. And so it's also very, very hard to know, should you be wiping down all of your groceries when you bring them home? Or is that completely safe and it doesn't matter? Because a lot of this is also calculated risk based on where you live, the situation, who you're around, who you interact with. I mean, if I were going and interacting with people who were elderly, who probably had underlying conditions, I might handle things differently than if I was only interacting with my family and my local neighbors. So those are all things that play into a lot of different decisions that people are making. And that's why it's hard to say you should do this or you should do that, which is very, very hard right now, I think.
I think I've come across this a lot. I've been quite concerned about the whole thing having this sort of underlying health condition, which may or may not make me more susceptible to getting badly ill off it. Nobody really knows. But getting letters from the UK NHS very frequently saying, don't leave the house, you'll die if you do, but go work because we're not paying you anything to stay at home.
Yep.
Essentially this sort of stuff. And now, of course, and then you kind of laugh it off, but then it's buried in there a little bit, and you're going, oh, what? So the way I've dealt with that, and I've been in, there was a production that I was working on in December, and there'd be like everyone other than talent is going to be masked up. It's all going to be cool. That lasted 5 minutes, and then nobody, other than me. But I've just found that the easiest way, rather than my sort of technique with it, is that I just say, I'm potentially vulnerable. I'm putting a mask on. Like and I put a respirator on rather than a mask, so it's actually, you know, you feel like you're properly protected and a good quality one. And I just tell everyone, this is what I'm doing and this is why. And then I don't feel self-conscious about it. Whereas before that, when I was just like, you know, I'm sitting around the back of the car and I'm putting this on, and you kind of go in almost feeling a bit embarrassed because clearly other people are less concerned about it than I am. And I certainly don't want to be going in going, you bastards.
Yeah.
It's a really difficult thing because it's such a personal, you know, there's a responsibility that everybody has. And I think if you just, I don't know, that's been my thing with it. Like, I won't get too close to people. I'll keep my distance and I'll explain to people, this is what I'm doing. And therefore I'm not, because again, if you go and start being a date with people, then you're not going to get the work again. It's a really hard balance. It's a horrible situation. And that's the worst. It's the worst thing about it. It's just,
I agree.
Yeah,
it's almost worse than, this is going to sound, don't take me the wrong way, everyone. Relax, everybody relax. But I was going to say it's almost worse than COVID itself. Like what it's doing to people.
Oh yeah,
and like
mentally
and families.
And everything. Yes, relationships.
Oh, like, and here in the United States, as Jem knows, it's so jacked up. Like people are so hyped up on both sides, all sides.
It is political.
So I totally get it, Ben. Like it's that's one of the hardest parts is not only, trying to follow whatever guidelines are in the industry, but also dealing with all of that, different opinions, different, and I think you nailed it. Don't be a dick. I think that's a good summary.
It
You know,
is. I mean, you have to
care
have
about,
mutual
read the
respect.
room,
Yeah.
care
Yep.
about people.
Yep.
I think people should be held responsible for their own actions. Or like
Yeah,
it's if you're gonna go outside, then you're taking a risk, and then leaving your house, you're taking a risk. It's not on other
sure.
people who are outside of your house, but at the same time, don't be an a-hole.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
if a sign says wear a mask to enter, wear a mask. Be respectful.
This is the thing, and what I found is that when I have had this thing, and I've said, rather than me just putting one on and actually saying, look, I am like, I know technically we all should be doing this. I know clearly you lot aren't. I'm doing this because, and then what I find is that then everyone, whenever they come within a reasonable distance, they then do mask up again.
Of
And I
course.
found that that's
Yeah.
just been, and I think once you kind of get over that and you've done it a few times and you have made that little statement at the beginning of proceedings, it's difficult because clearly you're not, and it's very then hard when you're directing, which was happening with that job to an extent, and people can't see your face, and particularly when you're directing in a language that's not your first language anyway, that you're not amazingly overly confident with, that's another level of complication.
Yeah.
But it's like you say, everyone's got to find their own little ways through it, and just, I think, not be embarrassed or feel awkward about it. You just sort of state your position on it, and you go from there. And generally, I found that everyone's very respectful of that.
Yeah, but I think that is the takeaway. I mean, I think the takeaway is that you have to respect the fact that there are. Tommy has discovered that the red raw files are a lot bigger than what you're used to. I was waiting for that, Tommy. By the way, when you got your A7S3 and you got your Komodo, and I haven't been surprised by your posts, and I have been following. You have to have respect for different viewpoints. I mean, Caleb and I have talked about that, and I'm sure that if we talk about the chat here, and and we talk even about the three of us, that we all have slightly different viewpoints about different things, and that's totally fine. When you live in the United or not United States of America, sometimes the thing you have to understand is that unlike some of the people who are hanging out here in the chat who are in the EU or other parts of the world, when you're in Germany or you're in Italy or you're in the Czech Republic, you have one country, and that country has made decisions. Whether you like them or not, they're the decisions that are being made for your country. It doesn't work that way in the United States. We have 50 states, and they all have a different idea about how you should be doing things. And that's what makes America beautiful and horrific all at the same time. But it is really hard because it has been so politicized in terms of this pandemic. And like I said, if you went to Florida or you went to California, your experiences would be completely different. There will be a lot of people who live in certain places in the country who go to Florida, and they would have a sigh of relief when they arrived and said, thank goodness they're not taking this the same way they are where I live. And then there's other people who would go to Florida and they'd be horrified and say, I'm just going to stay inside the entire time. And that's part of human nature and having our own feelings about things and all of that kind of stuff. But it's really an interesting thing when you look at it in terms of the impact for our industry in particular, because we basically live a life, for the most part, where we collaborate. And so when you collaborate, you immediately have different people with different viewpoints, many of them who are traveling or live in different locations. So when they all come together, it's no longer just, oh, we have a script or we have a documentary that we're trying to find a story with, and let's all work together, and we have our general personalities, which generally work very well. We also have this other layer, because you can't get away, whether you like it or not, you cannot get away from the pandemic every single day of your life. It's pretty much 24 hours a day. When you're asleep, okay, you don't have to think about it unless you dream about it or something, or it's a nightmare. But the rest of the time, it's always on our minds. Anytime I leave the house, I've got to stick a mask in my pocket, you know? Anytime that I make a decision that has to do with going somewhere, it's like 25 layers more of decisions. I'm going to go skiing with my son. Well, hopefully I'll survive on Saturday. It's been a while, but I'm going to go skiing with him on Friday, and it's, you know, it's
Stretch.
just yeah, I will stretch. Give me a break. I can't even touch my knees, okay? It's
Oh
ridiculous.
gosh, dude, you're gonna die.
Oh my goodness, stop it. I'm going to be in so much pain on Super Bowl Sunday. I was going to like cook some food and stuff. I'll probably just, I don't know what I'm going to do. Wearing a mask has become a social experiment for common decency, just like putting your shopping cart back at the grocery store. Yeah, there's some truth to that. I think what it boils down to, and I think you hit the nail on the head, both of you gentlemen, it really boils down to manners, you know, and that's what our society needs more of. It's manners and respecting what other people's viewpoints are. And that goes a very long way in terms of making this situation easier to handle. And if you take the manners out of it and you politicize things and you ram your viewpoints or your ideas down people's throats, then it's just not a good situation for anybody.
Yeah.
There's also a wild video being, oh my God, go ahead, 360 grad, go.
Yeah, he's talking about that. James earlier in the chat made a great point. I think there will be a trickle down of more scaled down usage of Mandalorian style virtual locations, which is kind of interesting to talk about and think about. Like, so regardless of where we are with COVID, the world will take a while to get back to normal. I think eventually we will get back to normal. You look at history, there's these blips, right? Someday everyone's gonna be like, wow, remember in 2020 when COVID hit? Oh, that sucked, or that was overreaction, or that was underreaction, whatever it's going to be. Someday we're gonna look back and be like in a way like polio, like that sucked. But you know, glad it's not like that now. But I'm wondering what techniques, technology, and habits will stick with us through this. And I think James's comment kind of speaks to that. Will we going forward see less huge sets with hundreds of people? Will we see more technology used? Will we see more lean, you know, small to no crew, which is what the three of us have been involved with for a long time, is not these giant sets, giant crews. Do you think that's going to kind of be the thing that sticks around? Are companies realizing, like Apple, I don't know how many people worked on those incredible product demos they did and all that stuff. The content they've been creating is like out of control. I'd love to know how many people were on set there. But are these companies going to realize, you know what, we don't need, you know, 18 trailers and 85 crew to make what we need to make? Will technology and kind of a more efficient, because let's be honest, a lot of, I mean, I'll say I have at least, and others have not taken advantage, but you know, I'm not saying I've swindled people, but when there's a budget, you use the budget, right?
Sure. Oh, I know, I understand.
When you can go big.
Yeah.
But will, with everything that's happened, will we all be able to be more efficient now that potentially clients and companies are like, oh wow, we can get something amazing with 6 people instead of 60?
I've thought about that. I mean, I think it's going to require the industry. I don't mean us as workers, as creatives. I think it's going to require the manufacturing industry that's behind the tools that we use for that to happen in a big way. And what I mean by that is, you know, you take people like Matt Workman, Cine Tracer, you know, you talk about what's happening with Unreal Engine, you talk about what's happening with Mandalorian, and you even scale that down to, you know, a company like Vitek starting to make wraparound screens that are smaller, that can be in small studio spaces. But it's the whole pipeline that has to become not easy, but it has to become affordable enough for that to occur on a corporate production level for that to really happen. Meaning, if you could take the concepts of what are being done in Mandalorian, which are actually quite complicated because you have an LED, wall or space or room, at least, seems like 180 degrees more to the ceiling, and you build practical sets or you have practical props and actors, and then everything that's happening with the camera or cameras and the action that's on the live action stage and then the LED wall, those are all connected to each other. So when the camera moves, it reacts, the background reacts to that as if a camera was moving in a real environment. So if you took a camera out to the desert and you shot a scene and you did a parallax move, or you went around a person, well, of course, the background's going to change in terms of, what's in the background because you're moving the camera around. Well, in order for that to happen at a smaller scale than Mandalorian, where you have, ACS, ASC cinematographers coming in and the whole crew who has built the technology behind that, and people from Unreal Engine coming in and giving consultations, it's going to have to be simplified to a certain degree. It doesn't mean there isn't a learning process there, but in order for that to happen at that degree, we're already able to build remote studios that are simple, green screen studios, things like that. I'd love to start to see self-illuminated backgrounds as at least a beginning, because one of the challenges we have in small spaces is you've got to light the screen, whether it's a white cyc or it's a green screen, and you have to light the talent. Well, what if you could just take out a 20 by 20 thing and just turn it on, and it illuminates the background as white, as pure white, or it illuminates it as pure green, and things like that. I think that there's interim steps, but I think for sure we're going to move that way. It's just we need the support of the industry, the manufacturers, and they have to figure out a whole pipeline. And I think that's an opportunity for people who are in that space, for sure. But I don't know,
God,
we'll
it
see what
sounds
happens.
so depressing, though. That sounds the most, no.
Yeah.
That's no, I'm sure it is going that way, but God, no.
Yeah.
I think that's the point to go do something else.
Yeah. I don't know. Well, I guess it depends on how creative you can be, as in, can you create the environments or work with people to create the environments? It is definitely a different way of production. I am not itching for a situation where I can walk into my barn and shoot the next television show. Maybe I would be if I knew how to do it. But right now that seems unattainable to me, at least from the standpoint of something like The Mandalorian. That seems so daunting. They make it seem so simple when you read the article and you watch the BTS. But the reality is that it's so complicated right now, I think. Right? It must be, Caleb. It must be, Ben. It's got to be complicated. How do you pull that off?
Yeah.
I look at Mandalorian. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, watching Matt Workman's videos makes it seem so much more attainable. Mm-hmm. It's a rig with an Ethernet cable.
Yep.
Connected to a GPU that's, figuring out where the camera's pointed. I think the tools will improve, right? So Mandalorian, the process they're using is probably very complex. But someday it's going to get simpler and simpler until it's, plug your camera into this cable or wirelessly connect to this thing, point left, right, up, down. Okay, we've synced it with whatever you're pointing at. Yeah. And now to auto do it. Just like we've talked about in the past on the show, someday we're not going to deal with lenses and apertures and all this. It's all going to be something that looks kind of like this. Yeah, maybe has, more mounting points, and we'll just point it at it and it'll do magic.
Yep.
And someday we'll be the old people like, I preferred it when I held my camera and I turned.
I love how old people always sound that way.
And I hit the AFC button and it autofocused, and it was a great thing. Now these kids are running around pointing little panels at things, and it's just looking great.
Yeah.
We'll be those guys for sure.
Yeah.
I
You
don't
know,
know. Maybe
someday
this
you
is
won't
just
have to
kind of
go
going-
find good lighting. Like we'll be like, I remember
Yeah.
when, you know, there would be awesome fog, and that's the only time you could get an awesome fog look. But eventually, none of that will matter, and you'll be able to make something that looks incredible with, you know, different tech. But
I
yeah,
agree.
I don't know.
No. I mean,
don't know.
it is but it's gonna take people like Matt Workman, Cinematography Database. It's gonna take companies like Unreal Engine, and it's gonna take companies like Vitek to build the things that allow you to create a small studio in a 20 by 20 room for all those things to come together. I truly believe they will come together, and I think we're only years away from that happening. And and for some people who are actually interested in doing that type of stuff, who are very tech minded but are up for the challenge, I think there's tremendous opportunity. And then there's still tons of opportunity to tell stories in a traditional way with the tools that are out there. So I don't think that's going away. But unfortunately, the Land Rover commercial, can be eventually put into any environment without putting any crew in any of those environments. That's the truth of it. And I don't know if I'm interested in that type of production, but the technology fundamentally exists for that to happen. And in the Unreal Engine, you can build any environment, and it is basically to the point already where it's completely photorealistic at this point. I mean, let's be honest. You can put a vehicle, whether it's real or not, into any environment, real or not. It's crazy what's happening.
Yep.
Now's
It's
maybe a
nuts.
good time to go and change career to something that would be more suited to gaining a yacht.
Yeah. Or the three of us just need to start saving up and then just, sell all our gear and start wood carving in our garages and retire. Just hang up the hat and call it a day.
I'm like you though right now, Caleb. I have no interest in doing reviews on products. I have no interest in people sending me anything. I want to create content moving forward, but I only want to create content that is based on creative and craft. I just don't have any interest. And this year has made that so obvious to me. Like how unimportant that is to me personally. It was actually important to me. Yeah.
Yeah. Tom, I'd love to hear Tommy's thought in the chat. Correct me if I'm wrong, Tommy, but he's right in the middle of it. Yeah. Getting sent stuff and all of that. But I finally got over the whole, it would be a cool opportunity. If someone sent me a XYZ 5000, that would be kind of fun to check out and try. And now when someone requests a thing like that, we're like, hey, we'll send you a thing or loan you a thing and you can do a video on it if you want. I can feel the entire weight of it.
Yep.
Before, I didn't quite see it all. And then when I get it and I'm in the middle of it, I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have done this. But now I can experience mentally the entire weight of it. And I'm like, no, thanks. Yep. I'm not saying that's wrong to do at all.
Yep.
But anyway.
No, I agree.
Interesting
thing.
But
I mean,
Tommy's
just
saying
Tommy
perks
said
that comes from
tons.
it.
Yep. Tommy says, God, I have so much crap I need to review. That sort of says it all. Someone has to do it. I never review anything on loan, so it's slightly more worth it.
Right, but Tommy, especially you, Tommy, you don't need more lights.
Right.
You've got enough lights. You don't need more lights. Sure, you might want more because, lights are awesome. Yep. B, you can't sell lights. I'm sure, Tommy, I think we've even talked about this, Tommy. It's impossible to sell lights. Sure, if it's something like an aperture light that's got some, popularity, but if you get, a light that might be better than aperture, you can't sell the stuff unless it's, cheap. Yeah. So now you've got, rooms filled with lights. And, not necessarily saying you should get stuff for free and then turn around and sell it, but it's just, the point is, you get to a point where you're like, I'm over this,
I'm over it.
And I was talking to another creator, and I won't say who, and we were talking about how, at a point you almost feel like you're just making free videos for free commercials for companies.
Yeah, because you don't want the stuff anymore.
Right.
I mean,
Well,
I
also,
don't.
like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think it's right to get paid to do a review. And sure, you can be smart about it, like Gerald and Dunn, and do sponsorships that are completely, you're getting paid from another entity altogether.
Yep.
Anyway, this is way off in the weeds, but it's just kind of an interesting thing. I've been, I'm over it, past it, done, bye.
Yep. It's an interesting conversation, though, because it really is a lot of what a lot of us follow or have followed in the past when it comes to content on YouTube. Is we all love gear. We all love watching people's take on gear. I think the value to me is really somebody's true take on how they're going to use a piece of equipment now, rather than just telling me what the piece of equipment is. And it's, I just had a conversation with a company I have a long-term relationship with, and I had inquired about a product that we've actually bought for my client and put into a place. And I was like, can you guys actually make an extension to this product so that it can be used more effectively? And the next thing that came out of their mouth was, well, we'll just send you, a couple of them, and why don't you create some content around it, and that'll be the exchange for creating the content. And I said, well, I'd rather just figure out if it's a piece of equipment I'd use, and I'll just buy it from you. Maybe because of our relationship, you can give me a discount, on the equipment, but I don't want it for free. I don't want to feel beholden to you. I don't want to feel like that feeling that you and I have both had, Caleb, which is, oh crap, I owe them a video. And it just keeps piling up and I just hate that feeling. I mean, I hate it from a client perspective. We all know what it feels like when you're trying to get an edit out and it's not out in time, or you're waiting for something. It feels like that, but when you get yourself into the weeds from an equipment standpoint, you feel like that, but like times 10, times 20. And, and then you start getting the emails. Oh, we'd love to see your video. I'm just not into that anymore. I'm done. Bye-bye.
What reviews are like wedding videos. You see the dollar amount you can charge, not for reviews, but you see the payoff of, like, I get a video out of it. I potentially get a thing out of it. I get to play with a new piece of technology.
Yeah.
But then you get to sit down and edit and be like, dang it. Now I've got 10 weddings. I got to edit 10. Not that I ever put myself in the situation, because I did one wedding once in my career. I'm like, I'm never doing this again, ever.
Yeah.
But and Tommy mentioned here he's wanting to convert his reviews more into stories, but don't have time to craft the stories right now. And I totally get that 100%. So my focus has been, I want, rather than the gear to be the main title and subject, and then there's bullet points under that, I want the gear to be bullet points. So it's a problem and a solution, and gear is a part of that. But I'm just so done with, here's the newest thing that came out. Let's go through the 10 features. Should you buy it? Should you not buy it? Here's a disclaimer. Oh. So, and someone mentioned what I'm interested in making. Is kind of what I've been doing the last handful of videos. Is just what I'm interested in. Buying weird old cinema cameras, playing with them, talking about that stuff.
I love that.
Random stuff I'm figuring out for myself. Just stuff that's interesting to me and helpful to others. Like, there's some videos like that I might not be as interested in, but I feel it's something that like changed how I do something for the better. And it needs to be out there to help that kid or that guy who's like struggling with the same thing that I just spent 40 hours figuring out. All that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that when it comes to creating content, it's really ultimately about being interested in the content you're creating. And I feel personally like I think a lot of people who go through that journey, that it's so hard to create content that's good content and that you feel good about, that you want to create. And so if you're going to do it, you kind of have to do it with the viewpoint that you really are making this because you want people to have that information and you want them to learn something. And you have to ignore people's opinions because that's really where it gets you. It's not as if somebody's paying you for this content. I mean, ultimately, if you decide to make content on a YouTube channel, it's your content. You're not putting out an album for a record label, and there's no expectation that it's going to sell a certain amount. The expectation is always your expectation. I want to grow the channel. I want to have this. I want to do that. I don't think that's the right way to approach creating content. So I've had a lot of false starts, and I don't have an interest in continuing to create content every week or every month unless it's something that I really want to create. And that's hard, but you know, it's I think you've got to kind of go with your heart on that kind of stuff. But we'll see.
I won't judge you, Bart.
Don't
judgment.
judge. No judgment. It's a process.
I'm just lamenting, you know, a decade of, you know, wading through this stuff. So
Yeah.
no sweat, no pressure on anyone to feel the same way as I do. That's just, yeah.
And I'm no longer going to give you, Ben, a hard time about not creating content for a YouTube channel because, quite honestly, it doesn't matter. You should be doing what you want to do, you know, and I don't know. It just seems like it's just a waste of your energy to create stuff for other people who don't. I don't know. Now I'm getting old. Now I'm getting
You
old.
see-
Whatever.
Now you see, I'm just enlightened, like eternally broke, but enlightened on that front.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there are some people who just do it. Like, I think Curtis Judd is a great example of somebody
Yep.
who I feel
What
like.
a saint.
And I think, you know, he creates he doesn't create content for any other reason than the fact that he's genuinely interested in the things that he's talking about. He's very good at creating that content in his own style. And to me, he feels like he has integrity because I don't feel like he's ever doing it just to get more viewers or just to get free gear and things like that. And I think that I have a lot of respect for that. And when I see his videos, I also feel the same way about, you know, I think that somebody like Gerald Undone is genuinely interested in the subject matter. Whether that changes in the long term, I don't know. He may become bored with that at a certain point. But right now, he's really in the discovery phase of, you know, I'm really interested in figuring out how these cameras work. He's a very technical person. He has a very distinct style in the way that he delivers his content. And I appreciate that as well. But I'm also finding that I'm less and less interested in just watching content about gear, which is kind of interesting. I used to just eat it up for breakfast. It was just like lunch and dinner. And now I'm really only interested in videos that have to do with like something I'm interested in. And maybe I was interested in those things just continuously before, but I'm not really interested in watching 7 videos about the same camera. I don't know. Maybe I'm just bitter now. I'm not bitter. But.
Until you're ready to buy, you know, the next thing and you want to learn everything you can about it.
Exactly. When you're ready to buy, you don't think about cars until you're ready to get your next car. And then you just go to town, and that's when you start watching all of the videos and reading all of the, you know, yeah. Tommy says that best quote of 2021 is, I said, I'm only interested in the things I'm interested in. and with that, everybody, it's 3 minutes after the hour. I'll take it. Why not? There's truth to that, by the way. Gentlemen, I love you. Thank you, everybody in the chat.
You guys
for coming.
too. Chat. Mwah. Miss you guys. Hopefully October
exactly.
NAB happens.
Hopefully
Give you all
October. Yeah.
a hug.
I read another article
be
today
amazing.
about that, thinking it's coming. I'm still not feeling.
No,
it
I don't.
yet.
I don't think it's gonna happen. But I dream. I think
Me too.
I fondly.
I hope so much.
If it happens and I don't have to
Fantasize.
be locked up in my room, you know, for 23 hours of the day, and then just only get to hang out with everybody for an hour, I'm going.
Yeah, same.
Oh yeah, yeah. Unless you know, I have to wear a space helmet, and I don't know. Unless there's something ridiculous I'll be
know.
there for sure.
You and I are going to meet. We should actually drive and then
we could all
and then
high
go
five
south.
and then run away giggling in like an alley somewhere.
That's right.
No,
Like little school children. All right.
we shook hands.
Oh,
Oh my goodness, COVID. I don't know.
Total Wine and More. 10 minutes from the airport. All right, kids.
We could just go hang out
Yep,
in there.
we can wishfully think so. And someday we will break bread together. We will cheers in person. And I look forward to that day.
I'm looking forward to that day so much.
Yes.
All right. Till then, gentlemen. Until next week. All the best. Enjoy your family. Enjoy your friends. Make some good food. And we'll see you on the flip side.